I'm sure that there will come a time to debate whether the government's approach towards Donald Trump since his election in 2016 has been the right one, but today is not the time. Because instead I believe the whole House, and indeed the whole world, should stand united today in condemning Donald Trump for his reckless, senseless and immoral act of diplomatic sabotage that he has committed. Every independent inspection has confirmed, even the US Defence Secretary James Mattis admitted last month, that the nuclear deal is working and Iran is complying with it in full. And yes, there are other important matters that must be addressed with Iran, its regional activities, its ballistic missile programme and its record on human rights. But the platform for that dialogue, the foundation on which future arrangements could be reached, was the nuclear deal. Instead, by seeking to scupper the nuclear deal, Donald Trump has destroyed the platform for future progress and risked triggering a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, handing power to the hardline theocrats in Tehran and pushing Iran back into isolation. Donald Trump is taking all those risks without a single care, without the slightest justification and without the simplest rational thought as to what will come next. And in doing so, he is also sending a message to North Korea that any agreement they reach with the US will be worthless. And while we could talk all day about the recklessness and the idiocy of what Donald Trump has done, the key question is this: how should the world react? And here I believe there are three challenges. Firstly is the challenge for those other signatories of how to best preserve the deal. For Britain, France, Germany, China and Russia, this means putting urgent legal and financial protection for companies and banks in our countries engaged in trade and financial transactions with Tehran so that they can continue doing so. And for Iran, they must have the patience and resolve not to respond in kind to this act of belligerence, but continue working with the other signatories to try and keep this deal alive. The second challenge is equally serious, but which is how to stop a descent into conflict. Iran is a country 9 times the size of Syria, with a population as big as Germany's. The idea of Iran racing to develop a nuclear weapon and the US administration seeking to stop them through military means doesn't bear thinking about. And yet we know that this is exactly what the Trump administration are thinking about. In February, the New York Times published an important comment piece accusing the Trump administration of employing exactly the same playbook used before the Iraq War to manufacture a pretext for war with Iran. This was written by Lawrence Wilkerson, former Chief of Staff to the US Secretary of State Colin Powell, who warned simply, "I helped sell the false choice of war once, it's happening again." And that was even before the appointment of John Bolton. So while we rightly focus our efforts now on trying to salvage the nuclear deal, we must also be alert to stop any further steps that the US may take to escalate its confrontation with Iran. The third and final challenge, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to mention today is, I believe, equally profound. Because if we did not know it before, what yesterday's announcement confirmed is that as long as Donald Trump remains president, we must get used to a world without American leadership, a world where efforts to secure peace and progress on the greatest challenges facing the planet must be made not just without American cooperation, but often in the face of this administration's active opposition. And this is the challenge we now face in relation to Iran, as it has been on climate change, the refugee crisis and the Israel-Palestine peace process. But starting with the consensus in this House today, I hope that we can all play our part in ensuring Britain